Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting here in just another few minutes, just giving some time for our sets of attendees to join. If someone could please use the chat panel to let me know if my audio is coming through clearly, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the help. All right, by my clock, it is the top of the hour. Thank you all for attending. My name is Alex Smith. I'm a senior CSM with our Global Sales Enablement and Training Department. And today we're going to be talking about MindManager and mastering process mapping with the platform. Some of our agenda items include things like the visual process and how you can use MindManager to create a map out of that, using the process discovery method within the MindManager platform, and of course, analyzing your processes. That way you can find any gaps or things that you can improve. And then lastly, being able to document and communicate those processes to everyone else in your organization, whether they are a licensed user of MindManager or not. So our duration is going to be about 60 minutes, and this is for our Windows-based users. I do want to make that very clear. If you are a Mac user, some of the functionality that I will show will be possible, but the way you accomplish it may be a bit different. So just keep that in mind. Ultimately, our goal here is to make it useful for all of our individuals. Of course, if you do have any questions, I am more than happy to take them during the sessions. You don't have to wait for a formal Q&A at the end, though there is a time designated for that closer to the end of the presentation. Feel free to chime in as things come up. And of course, you can use the GoToWebinar chat experience to submit your questions. Here's a quick look at that here. Of course, double checking your audio settings, things along those lines. And then lastly, of course, we hope that you do take time to fill out the survey at the end of today's session. This is how we understand if this is being impactful and helpful to you in the real world. And of course, if you've been with us before, you know that we actually do read these. We take them very seriously, and they are often escalated to our product development team as well. So feel free to chime in with some of your feedback here. And who knows, you may see some of your updates or edits in one of our future builds. And of course, if you have any questions after today's session, I would be more than happy to work with you personally. You can reach out to me here, alex.smith@mindmanager.com. Again, more than happy to set time up with you. In fact, I'm seeing some names that I recognize. So obviously a audience that is appreciative of the material that we're doing today. And speaking of that, we will be providing you with a recording of the content as well as downloadable maps. So everything that we cover today, you will be able to test out for yourselves, follow along, and even reverse engineer and create something brand new out of it. And of course, again, if you have questions throughout that process, feel free to reach out to me personally. More than happy to connect with any and all of you. All right, so before we jump into today's content, I do want to point out that I will be using a feature that is actually brand new. It's called Power Bookmarks, and I'm just going to trigger this next button here, and it will help me to navigate through today's content. And this has nothing to do with process mapping, but I did want to point it out since I will be using it. As you can see, Everything is actually on the exact same canvas, but we've taken a combination of things that you'll learn about today: images, text boxes, and of course topics themselves. And that's how we've generated these slide-like experiences. Well, the navigation from slide to slide is exactly where Power Bookmarks comes in handy. Now, with that navigation option, I can essentially create these one-off experiences and place them on the canvas anywhere that I like, and then I can create a bookmark by using the save option here, and that allows me to jump to it very, very quickly and very easily. This particular feature is a user experience for version 24 users only on the Windows side of things. So I do apologize if you are on even version 23, that will not be accessible to you. So just keep that in mind. Another awesome function that the power of the apps can bring is that it helps you to create custom ribbons. So the buttons that you have at the top of the screen here. This shortcut section is a series of documents that I use on a regular basis when talking to customers, and I was able to generate and create this by leveraging the new MindManager apps experience. So just keep that in mind. To be clear though, I had to have a developer license in order to do this level of editing and things of that nature. If I just wanted to use something that someone else has already developed, that would be very simple, and I would just need a user mode experience, which can be downloaded from our website. So there's nothing special or extra about that. But if you do want to develop criteria and have different kinds of content that you can then publish to your users, you would be considered a developer, and it does have a license key associated with it. Now, if you are, again, just wanting to use the platform, here's how you would go ahead and add the app. You'd go to mindmanager.com, and on the apps page, you would trigger the Get App option on any of the versions of apps that you like and want to test out. After that is downloaded, all you'll need to do is execute the little prompt here and press OK. The awesome part here is you do not need any admin rights because everything is stored inside of the MindManager document. There's no executable file. There's nothing that goes into the backend systems, that sort of thing. It's all directly embedded into a traditional mind map. And of course, we have an entire webinar for you that explains this entire experience from top to bottom by the developer himself, Nick Duffel, as well as Stephen Bashford. So that will be linked. That has its own set of maps that you can download, as well as a recording that you may watch. So again, if you have more questions on that, take a look at the webinar, and I'm sure it has been covered in great detail. But my goal was just to show you how I'm going to be navigating today's content and what a cool feature Power Bookmarks is. So now let's go ahead and jump into today's content. And before we do, I'm going to do a quick check on our questions. I am acting as both presenter and moderator today, so if it takes me a bit of time to transition between those roles, please do bear with me. I'll certainly do my best. All right, so we've got our first question here on the Power Bookmarks experience from Jack, and he's asking if the Power Bookmarks are exportable to HTML. And unfortunately, that's not the case. These are, again, embedded directly into version 24 for the desktop of Windows. So you would have to be leveraging that in order to use the Power Bookmark function. But hopefully that's something you add to the survey if you really like that feature, and our product team will put that on their to-do list. So thank you, Jack, and welcome to the webinar. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of different examples here. Again, these are just examples of things that are possible when you have developed a skill set around creating these process diagrams within the MindManager space. So I'm going to right off the bat show you some of the coolest things that you'll see, but we're going to then take a step backwards and I'll break it down piece by piece, how to actually implement everything that you see on these and how to actually start from scratch and end up with a document similar to these. So let's take a look at our order processing example, and we'll start there. All right. And it's giving me the option to preview, no need there. Alrighty, so the first thing to take into account here is that there are several elements that are happening on this canvas. The first is that we have a hierarchy diagram here on the left, which allows me to collapse and expand different pieces of the content. The other thing that you'll notice is that these topics don't look like your traditional MindManager topics. Well, that is because they've been formatted to have a specific topic style. This is something that we'll talk about in detail about how to add images to your topics, creating these custom image experiences so that they look and feel a lot more like things that you may need that MindManager doesn't have by default. So this particular example does showcase the fact that you can have a hierarchy diagram, which is bordered in blue, as well as a relation-based diagram bordered in green on the exact same canvas, working together to essentially accomplish one main goal. So let's say, for example, that you needed to identify this particular step, and then you wanted to maybe add a tag to it to determine whether it's an optional or a standard item. This is also a piece of filterable content. So if you were looking at this diagram and wanted to know, well, what is the minimum number of steps that it requires to go from beginning to end in this initiative, you could simply highlight that, choose the quick filter option from there, and then choose to show just the standard steps and remove all of your optional components. That way you know, all right, so if we work through these, we'll be on time and on schedule and that kind of thing. So it's a really great way to kind of give everybody the big picture, but then be able to drill down into the specific needs of maybe one particular user, one particular department, whatever the case may be. So again, just a high-level example, wanting you to see some of the things that are possible. Let's take a look at our question panel, see if anything has come in around this. Catherine, thank you for your question. You are correct. BPMN is not essentially by default available with MindManager, but I do have a couple of different examples that I'll be sharing with you today. And of course, that will have different kinds of custom image shapes that we've brought over to mimic that BPMN experience. So great question, but I think we have a workaround for you in that regard. Now, the other thing that you gain by bringing these two different mapping styles together on one canvas is that you have the big picture process here on the left, but then you also have a trackable element here on the right. So you can see as I've triggered off some of the items that have been completed, for example, the name and address of the order, you can see that I am now 50% complete with the task of verification of the order. So it's a great way to track things as they come up in the process, having them sort of side by side. You can also link this content together, which we will be talking about in our upcoming breakdowns as well. So don't want to jump ahead of myself, but a lot of material to cover on that particular use case. So don't want to do it all here in just the one example. So far, some very good questions. So let's take a look at an incident management document as well. And this goes a little bit further into that explanation that I was just giving, and don't need the preview, thank you. I was just giving an example of how the content on the right can be directly connected to the information on the left. So let's say, for example, that we wanted to get to all of the documentation for this step, the KD1 new request. Where you can see on the side of the topic here, there's a small icon that allows me to essentially access a hyperlink. When I click that, it's then going to try to identify any of the target zones within the map that have been connected. You can see that that one was not connected, but if I trigger this one, perhaps that one is working. Not sure why all of these are broken. Maybe the connections have been given a one direction. Let's try that from the reverse. There we go. So I knew they were connected, not sure what the holdup is here, but you can see that as I triggered this item on the documents list, it then navigated me over to that section within the actual process diagram. You can see that because the topic is now being highlighted. And again, that's for me to go through the documentation, look at the info that I need, and then as I need to see the big picture or where it falls into it, I can easily click it, and then it helps me to navigate directly to it, even if it's off screen like it did just now where it scrolled down for us. So just keep that in mind. You can keep all of this content on one canvas, have all of the documentation off to a side, nested under one of the hierarchy diagrams so that it's collapsible in nature and doesn't take up too much screen real estate. But when necessary, you have all of the other additional info at your fingertips. And here we have an example of several different paragraphs of information being brought over about a process. That can also include things like an inserted table. You can do numbering, indentations, and even embed images there as well. When we get to our documentation and communication portion of the presentation today, we will actually do a side-by-side comparison of what it looks like as a map and then what you will experience when you export it to Microsoft Word for archiving as an example. So it's a great way to use both process diagramming and a hierarchy diagram on the same space. Let's go ahead and back out here. All right, so again, all of these examples will be here for you to take a deeper dive into. For the sake of time, of course, I'm just going to push forward and to the next section of our discussion. So I'll go back to view here at the top of the screen and over to Power Bookmarks, and I'll just trigger next, and that will help us navigate to the next portion of the slide. Here we are. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to begin the process of building those kinds of diagrams. So, of course, File and New will be the place you want to start. So I'll go to File and trigger New. And from here, I'm going to be taken to the template selection screen. Now, in this space, off to the right, you're going to see your flowchart, concept map, and free-form map templates. All of these can essentially be utilized to start one of the diagrams that we're going to be working on today. Of course, the flowchart and concept map, they default to that green border around the topic, so it is a relation-based diagram, and that is already going to be the case. You could also select a free-form map if you are doing some form of a brainstorm, and then that brainstorm turns into more of a process. That would be a possibility using free-form as well. So just several different ways to go about it. Totally depends on what your use case is and how comfortable you are working in the platform. So again, wanted you to know all of the options that you have, and we'll go from there. Looks like we do have a couple of questions coming in. I'll wait until we jump a little further into our example before we begin to cover those. So thank you and appreciate the input. So let's say, for example, we want to start with a basic flowchart. We'll go ahead and trigger next, and now it's going to start up. So our shape wheel here is something that we have access to as soon as we hover over the anchor points on our topics. And then we can select the shape and, of course, place it into the canvas. So let's take a look at a little bit more about that. So all you have to do is, again, have a topic that is already bordered in green. If it's bordered in blue, the shape wheel will not appear. So keep that in mind. Hierarchy diagrams do function differently than the relation-based diagrams. So again, accessing that through the quick add buttons is one way to go about it. Then you make your selection and simply pop it onto the canvas. Now, of course, if you have a decision to make, there's a quick and easy way to add a decision topic so that you literally get 3 different topics with the stroke of 1 key. All you have to do is hold Control and press Enter while you have a topic selected. So in this example, you can see that we originally had 1 topic. By pressing Enter, you're then given a topic off to the side. But with the example topic highlighted, pressing Control Enter gives you all 3 of these, including the relationship lines with the labels yes and no, which are customizable. So if you didn't need a yes and no, maybe you need an option A and an option B, you can certainly go in and change the text here as well. All right, the other way to bring this material in is through the ribbon itself. So if you are on the Insert tab up above, you can then trigger a map topic to be added into the map from there. So topic left, topic right, above, below, or you could just bring in a floating topic. Keep that in mind. If you have a topic on the canvas, but you haven't selected it, however, then your map topic options will be severely limited because, again, it doesn't know which mode you're operating under. Maybe you're looking for a hierarchy topic, but you haven't selected one. Maybe you're looking for a relation-based topic. Again, if you haven't selected one, the software will only default to giving you a traditional floating topic at that point. And then, of course, lastly, simply double-clicking anywhere in the canvas or the white space will also allow you to pop in a topic and insert it. And then from there, of course, you can insert a relationship line between 2 different topics. So we have 1 bordered in blue here, 1 in green here. I'm going to go ahead and press the plus symbol here, and now I can make a connection to the topic I created by simply double-clicking. So several different ways to go about bringing the material in. I just wanted you to know all of them. That way you can find out what works best for you. Let's go ahead and delete that out, and you'll see that the relationship line itself will also be removed. All right, let's see if we have any questions about this content, and we'll carry on from there. 1 second. All right, so we have one question on the ITIL framework. I do apologize, Bogdan. I'm not familiar with that, but I would believe that we are capable of building it. The main reason is coming up in just the next slide or two, but ultimately the ability to have those customized images and those topic shapes will allow you to essentially create a one-to-one experience with other tools or other platforms or other methodologies. So it definitely seems like it should be possible. I just don't have enough knowledge to prepare an example for you, but I know that you can fully customize the canvas. So if you would like, we can certainly take that question offline. You can send me a couple examples of what you're looking for, and we can schedule a time to actually work on building some of that. But thank you for the question, and I'm happy you're in attendance. All right, let's go ahead and push forward. Again, returning to the View tab at the top of the screen and using the next option from Power Bookmarks. Alrighty, so next we're going to be talking about, again, the differences between the topic shapes and creating those custom topic shape experiences. So of course we have our default topic shapes. Everybody's pretty familiar and aware of those if you've been using MindManager even at a very basic level. This material is always at your disposal by using the formatting portion of the ribbon, and you'll want to make sure that you have a topic selected before going into the screen, or again, it will be working with a floating topic and some of the options may be removed or limited. Now, when it comes to creating those one-of-a-kind custom experiences, you're going to have two different windows that will be opening. The first is, of course, the format topic window, wherein you will be taken to things like the custom image shape option here, and that's going to be on the shape and color tab of that menu. Now, once you have added the actual shape, maybe you've selected a cloud as we see in this example, that's when you are going to want to go over to the behavior and margins for that particular topic and that particular shape. The reason being is MindManager may default to a size smaller than the actual image you're inserting, and the text won't appear. So let's go ahead and close this down and we'll talk through that here live. So let's say, for example, we have this item, step 1A. I'm going to right click on it and choose the format topic option from here. So you can see we're currently on the subtopic layout. That's not what we are looking for. Instead, we want to update the shape and color. And here is our custom image shape. Currently it's blank, so we'll need to select an image. And that will take us in, and I'll choose oval A1. And I'll go ahead and insert that now, and I will apply those changes. So here you are. You can see that the oval is now a part of the topic. It's no longer a rectangle like the other items around it. And keep in mind, if I do press cancel here, it will not undo any of the changes that I've just made. It will simply cancel out the screen, almost like if I pressed OK. So I'm going to press cancel to show you. If for any reason I didn't want that oval any longer, I could just hit the undo button from here. So you'll notice that the words step 1A are no longer accessible to us. We can't see them. That is directly related to the depth of our margins. So I'm going to go back through those steps and show how to update the margins as well. So right-clicking on the topic, I'm choosing the format topic option again, and here we are. We're back in our shape and color segment, but for now, we need to look into our behavior and margins. All right, and so now you can see that the margins on this were much too small to accommodate the actual text that we had for our shape. We'll go ahead and add a little bit more space to those, click apply, and now you can see step 1A is now visible. If, for example, we wanted this to start after the arrow, we could simply move that side over, reapply, and again, we're going to run into some specific needs here. So again, keep that in mind when selecting your shapes. You will want to kind of work with them before you start to make a final decision on it, just to find out what your options are going to be, how much text can fit in those shapes, that sort of thing. And then of course, you can also update the topic behavior to be automatic. So if you want them to grow with the amount of text, you can set them to automatic and have that be a dynamic experience based on how large the word is on the topic or how large the font size is that you select. Let's go ahead and cancel that window down and we'll carry on from there. Now, if you want to add additional elements to the diagram, there are several ways to do that. Keep that in mind, but the relationship lines themselves You can also insert between two different topics and then update all of those. So you can see that I have my shape wheel here. I can either choose a capsule, for example, but as soon as I connect it with this topic, it will not add that capsule shape. If I were to do that a second time, select capsule and then place it into a blank space, that is when you will see the actual capsule take shape. So just something to keep in mind. I've seen that several times on our user forums where people are having issues where they're trying to connect the lines to specific shapes and it's not working. So just keep in mind, if you're placing it in the white canvas, it will take effect and you'll be good to go. Some of you may have noticed that there's a border around some of these screens. That is a part of the background elements, and we'll be talking about that in the upcoming segment as well. But if you're ever working in a concept map like this and something in the background is getting in the way, or it's actually being highlighted and selected accidentally, you can simply lock all of those background elements. So by right-clicking on it, just simply come down to the lower segment here, trigger lock, and now you can see that that grid shape is gone around the background element there, but I can still have access to my topics within the map, and the entire canvas is still at my disposal. So I know we've covered a lot up until now. Let's take a look at some of our other questions and we'll carry on from there. One moment. All right, so we've got a question here from Jack. He asked, when I pressed cancel, it obviously applied the changes. Had I pressed OK, what would have happened then? So you're absolutely right. If I press cancel or OK, I'm going to end up with the exact same result. So that's one of those elements where I want to point that out during a webinar so that if you're going into this and you've made a bunch of changes to a topic and then you realize, well, I don't really like that, I'm going to cancel, you recognize that cancel essentially means close the window, not undo the changes that I've made. To undo, you'll actually want to come up to the top ribbon and actually hit the undo arrow, and that will return everything back to its original state. So let's take a look. I've just unlocked that. I've removed that topic, and if I hit undo once more, I'm going to be working with those margins and now removing the shape from the actual image on the topic. So several steps to go through that process, but again, if you do it early enough, it's just one click and everything's back to the original status. So thank you again. Great question, Jack. Looks like we have another coming in from Brian. Excellent question. So Brian mentioned that his company has a standard kind of background image that they use regularly, but it's all PowerPoint based. So Brian, to your question, I would say, yes, that is absolutely possible. And the option that you're going to want to use is the Insert tab here at the top of the screen. And you're going to want to bring over an image. So you can simply select that background image that you have there in PowerPoint, save it as some kind of a JPEG or some other kind of format that's easily recognizable, and then you could simply import that into MindManager using the insert ribbon right here at the top of the screen, going over to images, and then selecting standard image from file. That will allow you to access your computer. You'll go to like the My Pictures folder or My Backgrounds folder, wherever you've saved it, and then it will pop in, and of course you'll be able to resize it. And of course, like I was just mentioning, once it's there, you will want to lock it into the background so you're not bumping into it each and every time you try to update or edit one of your topics. And again, to accomplish that, simply right-click on the shape itself, trigger that lock, and now it's just essentially a part of the background. If, of course, you need to unlock it at any point, right-click on the background anywhere that you find it, trigger that background setting here, and then you can unlock your background objects from there. So great question. In the interest of time, we're going to push forward. See that there are a few more coming in, but again, in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we get through all of the material. Okay, so here we are with an explanation of the different styles of topic that are accessible and available to you. So again, bordered in green, that is going to be the relation-based diagram. That essentially means that the content itself is not interconnected, but they have a relation from one topic to the other. That is the inverse for the hierarchy style topics. These are directly connected so that you can have a collapsible nature in between each of the different elements or levels. And of course, you can see that they look extremely similar because you can certainly customize the experience one-to-one. Again, the main difference here is that between the relationship lines here, we have a label that allows us to explain the relationship between topic to topic. Whereas here, we have the collapsible item that allows us to essentially reframe all of the content. The other element to keep in mind that's visible right here is the boundary. This is only accessible to the topics that are in a hierarchy diagram. Because this material is directly connected to the parent topic, the boundary understands that it should grow and collapse with the amount of content that is displayed at any given time. To kind of mimic that experience within the MindManager world, as far as it goes with relation-based diagrams, that is where you're going to be inserting things like shapes or smart shapes. Either one of these is helpful when needing to put a segment around several of your topics or create maybe a subset of a process, something that needs to be done maybe first or second, and then wanting to visually identify, those as stages. Boundaries will not work in that same way because there are no quote unquote children topics. So even if I insert a boundary around this item, you can see that it will not engulf framed in green or the third topic here to the right. So again, in order to put that inside of something, it's best to use maybe a shape or a smart shape in that regard. And then lastly, we have the sticky note experience for the MindManager whiteboarding. But of course, as you can tell, that can be included in different diagramming types as well. So you don't have to just use that in one template. You can move that across several different types of templates. So the first thing that we need to discuss is, well, how do I change from one style of topic to another if I'm already working in a map and I find out that, oh, I've been building a hierarchy diagram, but I now need to make a process, or now I need to do some brainstorming and I'd like some sticky notes. What are the steps to accomplish that? Well, ultimately, it's very simple. You want to select one of the floating topics that are in your map. And again, I have to be very clear here that it has to be a floating topic, because if I try to select something that was already in a hierarchy with a subtopic below it or a subtopic below that, and then I try to change the type of topic that it is, that's when I'm going to lose some of my options, if you will. So you can go to things like the topic style to make changes to the look and feel if you've already established and set some of those. But if you're looking to actually change the topic type, that's when you're going to have to go into your formatting ribbon up above. And from here, you can see topic type will show me flowchart and sticky note are both grayed out. That's again because I have selected the hierarchy topic, which already has two subtopic levels beneath it. If I were to select a topic right here that has no lower level components, then I could maybe switch that over to a flowchart or a sticky note. So just keep that in mind. If you're trying to make an adjustment from a hierarchy, it cannot have any lower level material. Let's go ahead and hit the delete key there. The other way to do it is directly from the context menu, which pops up above right here. So from this angle, all I would have to do is go to the topic text, topic type methodology here, and then I could select a map topic. It's already currently a flowchart, but I could also default this to a sticky note here as well. The main difference between your bordered in green relation-based diagram topics and your sticky note topics is that by default, sticky note topics are pinned to the canvas. And that essentially means that you can layer content one on top of the other, just like you could do with an actual sticky note. So just something to keep in mind. If you have the need to do brainstorming in that way and you want to be able to overlap content, then using sticky notes is definitely going to be very helpful, because by default, the options are turned on with that item right there, pin topic. So that means that I can pin it directly to the board and then pin other items on top of it if needed. So a great set of features here, but again, several different examples for you to take a look at. These are probably coming back from our very first slide. I believe we covered order process and incident management already. And again, in the interest of time, we'll just keep pressing on. All right, so returning to the View tab at the top of the screen, using Power Bookmarks and selecting Next. So next we're going to be talking about how to clean up all of this imagery, right? I believe we had a question from Brian earlier about bringing elements over from another system like PowerPoint, and then what do I gain by putting it into MindManager? How do I use it? How do I make the most out of it? Well, here's one thing that I think is going to be very, very helpful and impactful, and that's being able to actually organize the content that you have on the screen visually and making sure that it looks good and there's not any of that kind of wonkiness to the lines, making sure that everything is crisp. So the first thing that we're going to discuss is selecting the topics in the proper order. That is very, very important because the last item that you select is what determines the positioning for your alignment. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to align all of these 3 different items together down the center. If I select this topic first, and then I go through the process of selecting the other 3 topics, and then I decide that I want to now format them, align them to the middle, for example, or down the center, it's then going to shift everything to the final topic that I selected. So you can see now it actually moved everything over to align with this lower level topic. Let's go ahead and hit undo and you'll see the adjustment that I'm talking about. So in what we would hope you do is actually save this topic for dead last. So you want to highlight this item, hold Control on your keyboard to do a multi-select, and then as the last item, select the item in the center. Then use Align, and we're going to align center now, and then these 2 topics will shift directly above our diamond. And here we are. So Align center is for your vertical alignment, top to bottom. Now align middle will be what we select for, again, going horizontal. And again, just to show you what not to do, if we wanted everything aligned across the center with the diamond, we would want to select this one last, but I'm going to do it incorrectly on purpose. If we highlight this one and end with the topic here, and we choose alignment down the middle, as you can see, it's now shifting the diamond downward to compensate for the location of this topic. Let's go ahead and undo that. And so now we'll select both of the topics outside, leaving the diamond as last, going to align in the middle. And now everything looks crisp and is pretty much perfect as far as alignment goes. The same can be done with text boxes, shapes, and even your smart shape canvases. So let's say, for example, that we want to bring the words block arrow up to the center of this arrow. We'll want to make sure that we are using the arrow as the last item that we are now setting our alignment to. We'll go ahead and trigger the alignment option, align it middle, and here we are. Let's go ahead and undo that, and let's say we want the opposite. Maybe we want to bring the block arrow down to wrap around the words block arrow. We'll do that in the reverse order, again going back to alignment, right in the middle, and now you can see, again, based on the last item selected, the block arrow shape has been brought down to wrap the word block arrow. So the alignment here is very, very easy when it comes to actually making things look and feel good. Keep in mind, you can also format the relationship lines themselves. So simply by highlighting the line with a right click, that's when you choose the format relationship option. That allows you to change the style of the line weight, and even the arcs that you have in the map. If you have items that are crossing over one another, you can design the way and the way they're going to interact with each other. They can have arcs, gaps, or bridges. So keep that in mind. And of course, you can update the line color as well. All right, let's see if we have any questions from here, and then we'll continue on. Okay, great question. So you can see that I'm moving the words block arrow here. If I wanted all of this content to move as one element, that's when I would create a group out of that material. So let's say, for example, that I want to highlight this item and this item. I would then right click, trigger this option to group both of them together, and now it's bordered in blue. And as I shift things, you can see that everything keeps its relative position, and I've essentially created, an actual block arrow with the words block arrow nested inside of it. So yes, it's definitely possible to move everything as one. It's just called grouping in MindManager. Great question, and thank you. All right, let's go ahead and jump back in. Going back to view here at the top of the screen, triggering next in our Power Bookmarks. All right, so next, again, talking a little bit more about cleaning up those experiences, making those lines make sense, and obviously identifying the differences between what you can expect in your hierarchy-based diagrams compared to what access you have when you are doing a process diagram like we have here on the right. So you can format things through the ribbon. Of course, the Format Painter is a very, very useful tool, and we haven't covered that yet, so let me do a quick example of what that's capable of. So Format Painter essentially grabs all of the elements of your topic except for the text. So it's just like copy and paste, but it's copy and paste for the look and feel of the content. So let's say, for example, that I wanted this topic on the right to look just like the topic we have up above. Going over to Format, choosing the Format Painter, I can now choose to copy the formatting of this item, and now I have it copied, and it will allow me to paste it anywhere else in the map that I want to select. So it literally grabs the same font colors, font sizes, fill colors, line colors, everything about the look and feel of the topic itself, but it doesn't grab the text. So it's not actually copying any of the information, but more rather the visual aspects of the material. You can also do formatting directly through the context ribbon. We just covered this a moment ago about right-clicking on the line itself, triggering that format boundary option, and then making adjustments. That is the exact same experience for updating your relationship lines as well. Simply right-click on it, go into the formatting section, and make the necessary adjustments as you see fit. Now, you can also save any of the formatting that you do as the default for the rest of the map. So that way you can save it as the map theme down here in the bottom corner. So that way, if I had maybe that yellow topic and every topic that was at that particular level, I want it to look the exact same, all I would have to do is make those changes, highlight the topic, and then right-click on that topic, going into our formatting topic options from there. And here's a one-to-one experience. You can see this is actually live and active. And I would use the map theme option and save it as the default for the map theme. Or if you've made several changes and you don't like what you've got, you can always tell it to revert back to the default for the map. That way you can kind of test things out, see how you like it. And if it doesn't fit maybe the branding style that you're going for, you can simply go back and start from scratch. All right, let's see if we have any questions there. That's correct. So if we wanted to change the anchor point of this item, we can simply grab the edge here and then have it connected to the actual right side. So this was already technically a straight line. These have already been aligned, but that would have been the next subsequent step. So in that example, I didn't need to align the topics to get the line to be straight. The topics were already aligned. I just needed to grab the anchor point and then to reposition it along the line itself. So that wouldn't have been a situation that requires an alignment. Great question. Thank you. All right, and let's see. Oh, well, I guess literally just what we covered. You just beat me to it. I was going to be showing that next, but I like your question because automatically you thought, okay, I should align these and that will straighten the line, but technically the two topics, right? So we're looking at decision and step 2B. Technically, the two topics themselves were already aligned. So I'm glad that we did it in this way so that you wouldn't have thought aligning them would have automatically fixed that line. It was rather the anchor points that needed to be adjusted. So excellent feedback, and thank you for the question. All right, so returning to the View tab here at the top, triggering next again in Power Bookmarks, we're going to continue down this path of talking about the groupings, having all of the material, you name it. Let's go ahead and ungroup this material. There we are. Now we have access to more of the internal. Let's go ahead and ungroup all of these items as well. Oh, wow. Not sure what just happened. I think MindManager conked out on me. All right, sorry everyone. Give me 1 second. That was not supposed to happen. While MindManager is loading back up, I'll take this time to take a look at some of our follow-up questions and we'll carry on from there. Okay, so we have a question from Jack, and he's asking about reverting the changes to the default for the map. So if you recall, Jack, in that particular question, you're asking about reverting that information to the default for the map. But keep in mind that we were selecting a topic specific experience. So it would only revert the changes that you've made to that particular topic. So if you had gone, to 3 or 4 different topics, making adjustments along the way, at that point, you would have essentially needed to revert each one of those topics individually back to the default for the map. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to chime back in and we'll go from there. So we are back here on the slide. You can see that this information is grouped together and I can move both of these shapes around as one element, but the topic itself is not being adjusted. Well, you may wonder, how can we go about that if I want to put something in a shape and then make that shape lock onto the topics? It's actually very, very simple. From here, all you have to do is trigger the right click on the topic itself, not on the group. I want to make that part very clear. Bordered in blue was the highlighting for the entire group. Now I'm bordered in green, you can see that there, and now I'm selecting that shape as a topic container. Now when I do grab the entire group and I move it, the topic is traveling with that particular circle. So it's acting as a static point of reference for the topic itself, and it's always going to be relatively in the exact same spot, no matter where we move it. And of course, the shapes themselves can be updated. So let's say, for example, I want to bring this shape to the front of the rectangle. I can do that by right-clicking, similar to what you do in PowerPoint from that experience as well. And then, of course, we've talked about grouping. That's essentially highlighting the 2 different shapes and triggering that group option and then selecting that they become one as a group. So from that perspective, very simple to accommodate any of the kind of, I guess you would say, presentation-like aspects of MindManager, right? Layering things together, like Brian mentioned early on, putting an image in the background, layering logos over the top of it, putting header boxes at the very top, and then of course body text, and then examples down below. Very, very straightforward and very simple, but it can get cumbersome if you aren't aware of when to group things, how to lock things, right? Even trying to select something like this circle could seem daunting if I wasn't aware that it's inside of this group. Now that I've highlighted the group, I can then make another sub selection and actually get to the circle that I was trying to click the very first time. So again, making sure that you are aware of what's grouped, what's locked, what's not will be very, very helpful. As a quick example, let's say that I locked this circle to the background. Now, when I actually hover over this, I can get to my group, I can move my group, so it all seems like it's working as I would expect, but when I try to actually highlight or select the circle itself, it's never going to give me the option for it. I can highlight and select the rectangle like we just did for the circle a moment ago, but because the circle is now locked to the canvas, it's not an editable option. So just keep that in mind. If you're ever faced with that experience, simply right-click the white canvas anywhere you find it, go to backgrounds and unlock your background objects. Now from here, I can go ahead and select my group, and now I should be able to select my circle. Okay. MindManager, you're doing some weird things to me today. I tell you that much. Let's go to background and it should be unlocked. That is so weird. All right. Don't know what's happening. We've just been running into a lot of wild circumstances this morning. So any questions on that? Let's take a quick peek and then we'll carry on. All right, so Dan is asking, can you save a custom shape as a kind of a template, if you will? So Dan, to your point, you can't save this shape in a library of sorts, but you could essentially create a template document where you then save several of the shapes that you may use time and time again. So if I were to create a group out of all of this, and then I save this actual map as a template, I could then launch that template anytime I needed to copy and paste this shape into something else. So it's kind of a workaround, if you will, but we don't have a way to create custom shapes and then save them into a library all their own. Great question, and I hope that you add that particular update to the survey. So thank you for that, and I'm glad you are in attendance. Again, in the interest of time, just going to press on to the next example here. This is a direct comparison of the experience that you might have if you were doing some kind of a process diagram in Excel. And then, of course, off to the right here is the look at what that would equate to if it were built into a mind map. So again, identifying the role that's being played, what steps are being taken, and then the interconnectivity between those different elements. I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. This is not the imported version of the content. This is essentially something that you would have to create manually. I know that you've probably seen the Excel data mapper on the advanced ribbon and things like that. This example is directly disconnected. This example is only for hierarchy-based diagramming maps. So relation-based diagrams, like a process, is not going to be something you can use the Excel data mapper for in that capacity. This is, again, hierarchy-based only. This example is just to show a side-by-side or a one-to-one comparison of how you would be able to visually identify everything that's going on in this Excel document, not meant to be an import experience one-to-one, not at all. All right. Looks like we have some feedback. Oh no, that was Dan saying that okay, got it. Thank you, Dan. All right, and again, in the interest of time, just pressing on forward here. One final example that I do want to share is this example on process diagramming, for the sake of kind of seeing things for what they are, but also identifying what things could happen. We had a very small example of this early on, but this one has a couple of other bells and whistles that I wanted to point out. All right, so let's go ahead and remove that filter, and we'll bring everything back into view. So you can see that this is essentially a service request experience that a customer comes to MindManager and they make a request. Maybe that request is that they want us to do some kind of a customized training for their specific department needs, or maybe they're trying to roll out more licenses and they want to have several documents reviewed and sent over, whatever the case may be. Well, the service request experience has steps in it that are manual, steps that are automated, steps that are pre-approved, steps that need approval, steps that are standard, steps that are optional. And everything that you can see on these topics is considered a tag. Those tags allow us to filter against specific pieces of content as we're moving through discussions around the process, around ways to improve the process, around bottlenecks in the process. And then you'll see below that, there's also a tally that's accounting for all of the wait time associated with each of these steps. That time is then being summarized here at the top of the screen, essentially letting us know if we're being efficient, if we're not being efficient, and ways to improve that efficiency. So we can see that the total time is 176 hours to go through this full process top to bottom. Now, let's say, for example, that we wanted to know how long are the steps of the service request. We could come here, quick filter, show topics with that marker. Oh, I forgot to add that in the corner. That's my bad. Let me go ahead and remove that. Now, by adding service request here, letting it be a part of this tag, now you will be able to see quick filter, show topics with the marker. And now we can see that the service request is down to 27 total hours. So that's not too bad. We can certainly go ahead and remove that filter from there. Ultimately, what this allowed us to do here internally at MindManager was to look at our service request experience, identify those bottlenecks, and what we charted was a default path forward. So if we quick filter that, you can see that as we get things that are pre-approved, get all of our automated processes that we could swapped over from manual, the entire process from beginning to end takes only 56 hours compared to the original 176. When we have things signed, we've got documents already prepared, whatever the case may be, if it's something that we can manually update, make it an automated experience and speed that process up, it's going to be very, very beneficial for our customers. So that is a quick crash course on using a process diagram equipped with formulas and filters, bringing together a one-of-a-kind experience about gaining efficiency, identifying your current state of being, and hopefully game planning where you want to be in the future if you find that you are doing things at a slower clip and you could find ways to improve. Let's see if we have any questions on that before we jump into our last segment. Great question, Brian. Yes, the swim lanes are a background element. You can see I have access to them. They are not locked. That's why we have the border around it. So yes, absolutely they are, but they are also overlapping a second set. So right, we have some that are going horizontal, we have others that are going vertical. So you'd have to be very careful when editing one compared to the other. If you're looking for a specific cell, you may be a little bit better served using a table rather than bringing two different horizontal and vertical swim lanes together as one item. So just keep that in mind. You'll have to kind of test that out for yourselves, see which one works the best. All right, so let's go ahead and close that example down and we'll jump back into our presentation. Great question, thank you. All right, and lastly, this is the documentation that I was telling you about. So I'll go ahead and open that service request process once more. This is a different service request, again, being broken out here on the left. To the right of it is the actual documentation, all of the info that's going into it. So that's just a quick look at what the map is on the left and the documentation on the right. Now we'll go ahead and open the exported version of that document so you can see exactly how that would look if you needed to maybe archive this process and break it down for all of the folks that will be leveraging it. So of course, the very top of that document is going to be the actual image of the map itself. Then you will have an index that allows you to identify where to go for what steps. And then you actually have the breakout showing you process documentation, customer number 1, and then so on and so forth, level 1 support, level 2 support, and the development team. So each and every phase is numbered, bulleted, and listed in a way that's easy to understand and easy to correlate to what you see in the process on the left. So again, as promised, a quick example of documentation. Now, in order to export this material, you simply go to File, trigger the export option here, and then choose Microsoft Word. And that is, again, for anything that has a hierarchy diagram structure to it. So that's the key component to remember. We are not exporting the actual gridded structure here on the left. We are exporting all of the documentation and data stored here in the hierarchy diagram on the right. All right, let's go ahead and jump back in. And again, we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I do want to breeze through this pretty quickly. And of course, this material can be generated as an HTML5 export. So again, file and export. HTML5 is an interactive map that essentially allows you to send the file to anyone. It will look like a map. It will function like a map. They will even be able to filter against that material as well. So it really is a functional and helpful way to actually use the map if you are working with non-licensed users, right? Some folks that don't have MindManager at their disposal. Well, here's a quick look at exactly what they would experience. Again, the filters are still accessible. So if they wanted to see one path compared to a second, they have that option at their disposal. So a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. And then of course, you could also publish that content. That creates an exported version of the content the same way that you just saw. The main difference here is that if you need to, you can continue publishing updates to that exact same document, and it will then overwrite what people had previously. So if you're working on something that's transitioning or changing week to week, publishing that content rather than exporting it is probably a better choice. And then of course, we provided you with the original mind map document as well. That way you can reverse engineer it and test it out for yourselves, either publishing or exporting that material. So we have reached the closing of today's session. I'm going to take another quick look at our question and answer panel, see if anything has come up. If so, I'll certainly address those. Let's take a quick peek. Let's move this back over. Not sure why. Maybe I used the drag and drop a moment ago. All right, let's see here. Similar swim lanes. Okay, great. So yes, that's absolutely correct. You will have a copy of today's content. Do keep in mind, however, everything that we've done, since this is the final segment of the 2024 Meet the Experts, everything that we've done is now at your disposal. So if you want to go back and see something from January or February, just using these links will take you there for the English, German, French, and the European segments that we've done. over the past 12 months. And then if you want to go back further than that, even into 2023, I suggest taking a look at the actual calendar. Now, this does have a separate link that will take you to 23. It will also have a link there that takes you to 22. So, I mean, we literally give you every piece of content that we have. You can download all of the material, watch all of the older webinars, and it is probably one of the best resources that you have as a new or a returning user. As I mentioned at the top of our call, it's a pleasure working with you, and I hope that you do take the time to explain what today was like for you. Was it beneficial? Was it helpful? Did some of it go over your head? Were there needs that you had that we didn't meet, right? We want to make sure that we are truly being helpful to our customers, and this is one of the key ways that we do it, is by getting your feedback during the survey. So do take the time to share that with us, and it would be greatly appreciated. And of course, it will be something that we will put a very serious amount of effort behind if we get enough votes. So here's a quick look at the material. You can expect that in 2 to 3 days. It will have a copy of today's maps as well as a recording to watch via Vimeo. And there's also the Starter Academy. So if you are somebody that just wants the bare bones basics and you want to start from the ground up, I would say starting here is a very good place to be. It's a 5-part series. Each video is 1 hour. It's totally free. And all you have to do is go to that webpage, sign up for it, and all the material is yours. It has been an absolute pleasure working with all of you today. If there are any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me personally, alex.smith@mindmanager.com. I hope you have a great holiday season, and I look forward to working with you again in the year 2025. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.